Hello and welcome to Crochet Along with Miss Carol. This is part of our Crochet Skills series, and what we're going to talk about today is how to read a pattern. We're going to start with a pattern that is available on our website. You can go to mybpl.org and go through the menus at the top of the screen, click on Programs, scroll down to the end of that menu to Youth Services Program Handouts. Click there and you'll find a folder of Crochet Along with Miss Carol patterns. The pattern that I'm using today to demonstrate the different parts of a pattern and how to read them is called Crocheted Coaster. And we're going to be crocheting in the round, or the pattern will be about crocheting in the round. So here we go. So here is our pattern. You'll see at the top it tells us that we are working the crocheted coaster. We have a picture of what the pattern should look like when it's finished. There's a little note at the top that says this project is worked in the round. We will learn how to make a circle, stitch a combination called a shell, and how to increase. So that tells you a little bit about what's going to happen in this pattern. Some designers would tell you what their pattern can be used for, just some information to let you know, is this something that you're going to be interested in making? This pattern was designed for as a part of a learning series. So I had wanted to make sure that we learned some new stitches and how to use them. Then, this will be common with every pattern. You'll have a section that tells you what materials and tools you're going to need in order to complete the pattern. Here it tells you that we're going to use worsted weight 4. This says cotton yarn, but it also has a note here that whereas cotton is absorbent, you can also use acrylic. And this is a good project for using up scraps from other projects. When you have a project that doesn't give you a specific number of skeins or a specific yardage amount, and says that it can be done from scraps, make sure you have a ball of yarn, at least so big, to work with. When they're talking about scraps, they don't mean the little pieces. I had one right here. The little pieces like this that you cut off the end of your yarn. They're talking about what's left at the end of a skein or a ball of yarn when you're done with another project. I'm using an H-sized hook. When you're looking at a pattern, you can use a different hook from what they say. Be aware that it will change the look and, most importantly, the size of your pattern. So with this coaster, if I used a hook I or a J, because I didn't have an H or I didn't want to work with something that small, then I would just know that my coaster would be bigger and I would need more yarn than I would with a smaller hook. I need a yarn needle, and I'm going to need a stitch marker. Stitch markers are very important when you're working in the round, and we'll see that as we get down to that section. So then after it tells you what you need, it tells you what skills you're going to need or what stitches you're going to use and what this designer is using as the abbreviations. These are fairly standard abbreviations. CH equals chain, SC equals single crochet, DC equals a double crochet, SS is for a slip stitch and is usually used to finish off something that's going in the round. And then in this one, because it was part of a learning series, it tells you the skills that you'll need in order to do this project. These are skills that are not going to be explained to you in this pattern, but that you will be expected to know before starting the pattern. So if you don't know them, that would be a good time to find some tutorial videos or an explanation, a written explanation of how to do it until you know how to do each of those stitches so that you're ready to start and will be successful. Then we have what's called special stitches. This, we're going to make a shell on the outside part of our coaster. And the shell in this pattern is going to be made up of 5 double crochet stitches in the stitch that the pattern indicates that you put them in. A shell is a grouping, usually double crochet, but you could have a shell made of triple crochet, of stitches done in 1 stitch or 1 chain space. And it's usually a odd number. You could have a shell with 3 stitches, you could have a shell with 5 stitches like we do here. I've seen them in 7, sometimes even 9 stitches to make a fuller, bigger shell. So when it says shell, your pattern needs to tell you what kind of a shell they want you to use in this particular pattern, and this is where they'll do it. When we get to that point later in the pattern, it will just say shell in and tell you where you need to make it. And you might need to go back up to the top of the pattern to double check and see, oh, how many stitches did they want me to put in each of these shells? So then we're into our instructions. And here I've put mine, many patterns will do this, that you're going to start off with a chain 2. So they expect you to know that you're going to do a slip stitch. And know how to make a chain. And we're going to do 1, 2, there. Row around 1, we're going to do 8 single crochet into the second chain from the hook. So we take a look here. And you'll see there's the 2 chains that I made. It's hard to work into the first chain that I just completed. I'm going to work into that second chain. Bring my tension right here. And I'm going to do 8 stitches in that same chain. 1, 'It's like working in a mirror, working on this with the camera this way. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it tells me not to slip stitch in the next, or do not join, and do not turn. I'm working in the round, so I'm going to work in a continuous spiral. Because this is a teaching pattern, it explains that we're going to work in a continuous spiral with no joining stitch between the rounds. You're going to use your stitch marker to mark that first stitch. As you complete each round, you're going to move your stitch marker up. So turn my pattern over so we can see the other side. And I have further explained in here how that works. We can go on to row 2 on how to read this. So now it's telling me to 2, SC means to single crochet in each stitch around. Since this is a training one, I'm reminding you to put your stitch marker in your first stitch. Not all patterns are going to remind you to use your stitch markers. Many patterns for working in the round, especially those for stuffed animals, will assume that you've done this before and that you know that you need to use your stitch marker and move it as you go along. So here's that first stitch. I'm going to go through and make my 1 and 2, and I'm going to use my stitch marker right here to mark that first stitch. Then I'm going to continue doing 2 stitches in each stitch so that I add those increases. 2 stitches for every 1 stitch. Each round, I'm going to add 8 stitches to my stitch count. So it'll tell you at the end of your row here that you should have 16 single crochet when you finish this row. It's a good idea to count your stitches, especially when you're beginning, to make sure you have the number of stitches that you expect to have at the end of each row. Then we move on to row 3. We're going to single crochet into the first stitch in the round. That's the stitch that has that stitch marker in it. You can take the stitch marker out so it's easier to see where you're crocheting into. And then put that stitch marker in again because that's the beginning of round 2. Then I'm going to single crochet into the next stitch. Well, let's see. Let me read this. And when you get to the stitch marker, you will know you've completed the second round. We're in round 3, single crochet in the first stitch in the round, move your stitch marker up, 2 single crochet in the next stitch. So we're going to do 2 single crochet. Now you'll see that there's an asterisk. And it says to single crochet in the next stitch, 2 single crochet into the next stitch, and repeat from the asterisk until you've gone all the way around, and that you should have 24 single crochet. So we're adding another 8 stitches. That's what the asterisks mean in this, is that you do, where the asterisk starts, that's where you're going to repeat that pattern over and over until you finish that round, or until however times. Sometimes it will be say repeat 4 times or repeat 3 times. And that's what that means to do. We're going to follow those same kind of instructions all the way down, row 4, row 5, row 6, until we get to row 7. I'm going to go ahead and get down here to finished row 6 and then show you how to read the instructions on row 7. Okay, so I've completed I've completed row 6 and I'm ready to start on row 7. Let me show you what my piece looks like so far. It's a flat round circle. Row 7 tells me to single crochet in the next stitch. So I'm going to single crochet there. Now it doesn't tell me to put my stitch marker back in, but I'm going to do it just to be safe. The reason it didn't write that in to put the stitch marker is that this is going to be a very different kind of round or row. And so it's going to look very different and should be pretty obvious when you finish the row. But I like that stitch marker just so I know what I'm coming up on it. So it tells me next, there's my asterisk, it tells me to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, skip the next 2 stitches. So I'm going to skip 1, 2 stitches, and then I'm supposed to single crochet in the next stitch. So I'm skipping 2 and single crocheting, oops, sorry, I'm out of the frame there for you, in that next stitch. Then there's that asterisk, and it says to repeat from the asterisk all the way around. So I'm going to repeat 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, skip, and single crochet. And you'll see what that has given me are these little chain spaces. So we're going to do that all the way around. So I've chained 3, I'm skipping 2, and single crochet. Okay, so I am back to the front. So I have 2, and I would be working into that first single crochet that I did. And it tells you that around here, that when we get here, we're going to join with a slip stitch into that first single crochet. There we go. Now I'm going to take out my stitch marker. It tells you in the parentheses that we should have 16 3-chain spaces here. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So now we're ready to move on to row 8. We're going to single crochet in the next chain space. Right there. So instead of working into a stitch, we're working into that space that we just made. Now we're going to shell in the next chain space. And remember, at the beginning of our pattern, it told us that a shell was 5 double crochet stitches. So I'm going to yarn over and do 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, 3 double crochet, 4 double crochet, and 5 double crochet. After we shell, we're going to repeat that around. So basically we're going to do the single crochet and then shell in one in the chain space and shell in the next one. So here we go. Single and then a shell. Okay, you do not need to watch me do 16 shells, so let me stop the video here and I'll show you how to finish it off. So I finished my 16 shells, or my 8, I'm sorry, I have 8 single crochets and 8 shells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shells. And to finish off this row, I'm going to slip stitch into that first single crochet I made. That's how I join it. Now it tells me to finish off, which means I'm just going to pull my yarn through, pull it tight, pull enough yarn that I have room, and then cut my yarn, pull it through so that it's knotted and won't come undone. I'll use my needle to weave in my ends, which is covered in another different video. And I have done the crocheted coaster using this pattern. Happy crocheting. We'll see you next time.